So you're using Wix and you want to set up structured data for some of your pages to enhance their performance in search results. Welcome back to the Wix Wiz. I'm Eitan, and today we're going to be talking about just that. We'll start off with an overview of what structured data is and in the context of Google and other search engines, how it should be structured, and how we can add that to static pages on Wix. We'll also be talking about how to do it for dynamic pages using dynamic variables and how it looks inside of the Wix Stores product pages. Lastly, we're going to finish off with a demonstration of how to do an advanced setup using code. If you want to see all that and more, let's get started. For today's demonstration, I'm going to be using a classic Wix website, but keep in mind that everything I'm showing you here can be done equally in Wix Studio as well. Before we actually get started over here inside of the editor, I want to take a step back and talk a little bit more about what structured data is and what JSON-LD is. So to do that, we're going to hop over to Google's guide over here. And it's important to remember as we take a look at this that as we talk about structured data and JSON-LD, that these are not things that belong to Google per se. The concept of structured data, it's something that Google uses in order to provide rich results or better search results for certain types of features, which we'll talk about in a moment. The whole concept of JSON-LD, if we go over here to this guide over here, it's an open concept. It's a concept that's used in other contexts as well in the web. And essentially, it's a data structure which, in the words of the people that designed this system, allows machines to understand machines. So whereas a typical web page might have data in lots of different types of structures, structured data is data that follows very specific rules in a JSON format. So you can see over here that we have a JSON object essentially, and it has very specific properties. So for example, the context, ID, name, etc. And these are different properties that machines essentially know to look out for and use that to categorize data and their relationships. So that's a key part here. And I recommend reading this guide that Google provides, and also keeping in mind that other search engines and other, in this day and age, LLMs and AI systems might treat this data in different ways. They might have their own features and stuff that they're looking out for. So take everything that you see here in the context of Google, which is still extremely important, with a grain of salt. But essentially what Google outlines here in this guide is how structured data works, and how to set it up on your website for which things. So this graphic here is actually quite helpful, I think, in understanding what structured data is. And essentially what it does is it takes data that you might have on your site. So in this example here, and this is similar to the example that we're going to be taking a look at later together, this is like a demonstration of a rich result of a recipe on a website. And the way that Google knows to display the information about the recipe is because in addition to just the web page, which you can see here on the right, that has, the recipe itself and the image and whatnot, this person has added to their website JSON-LD format, which outlines data about this recipe that Google knows to go ahead and find and then create the rich result from it. Okay, so essentially this code snippet, this HTML snippet essentially that we're adding to our page is something that helps to clarify and expand on what data exists in our page in a structured manner so that Google can find it and do what it wants with it. Google and other resources on the internet that might be searching for your page and doing stuff with your page. So this, essentially what we see here in the middle, this is the bridge. This is the JSON-LD format that we are going to be using. And you can see here that it has several different parts. So there are some things that you might recognize from that general JSON-LD website that I showed you earlier. So for example, context and name and stuff like that. Type is also very important. And there are other things that are unique. Okay, so this is a recipe, so it has certain categories that are certain properties that are relevant, especially for recipes. And in order to understand, if certain elements of your website can be displayed in terms of structured data, or if you even need to create structured data for them, and what that structured data looks like is also here in this guide. And if you go over here on the side, you'll see here the feature guide. And this essentially is a long list of all the different things that Google supports. Again, it's important to understand that what I'm showing you now is what Google supports. So it could be, for example, if you go to Bing, I haven't done this myself, but theoretically, if you go to Bing and you take a look at their support for structured data, then it could be that they have a different list of things here that they're looking out for. It could be the same, possibly. There could be certain things that overlap and certain things that are different. So keep in mind that this, again, this is the Google list of structured data features that they support. But considering the significant portion of the search market that Google currently holds, I think it's safe to say that this is probably what you're going to focus on initially, and then you'll explore other options later on. So that's what we're going to focus on today in terms of what Google features here. And you can see here different types of things. So like an article, data set, event, FAQ, that's a pretty popular one. A very important one that we'll see later on is also in terms of products, which I'm shopping. Okay, we have shopping here and we have different product aspects. That's a super important one. And another thing that we're going to be taking a look at is also the recipes as well. So it's important to understand that not necessarily every single thing can be converted into structured data. Okay, just because you have data that might be structured in a certain way and you really, really want it to be featured on Google in a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean that Google supports that. So it's important to take a look and see here what it does support. And also, once you know what the thing is, to go in, for example, if we go over here to event, I can see what the structured data looks like specifically for events. Because remember, events are going to have different types of data from recipes. There are different things that people need to know about an event. So you can see here they have an example. And specifically what you want to take a look at is the list of things that are required and not required. So here's, okay, so here they're pointing to an external source for event. And here they lay out some of the required properties. So for example, you need to have the location of the event, the location.address, and you need to have the name of the event and the start date. So those are the required properties for a specific event. And here we also have the recommended properties. So here we have other things that you can add about your event. So the more you add, the better. It'll add more context for Google and for the people searching on Google, and it'll just make the results richer and probably improve your standing in terms of Google in general. But again, there's difference between the required and what is not required. So that's a brief overview of what structured data is, what JSON-LD is, and what they are in the context of Google and search engines, and also possibly LLMs as well. And now what we're going to do is we're going to get our hands dirty and see how we can implement some of these structured data inside of our Wix website to improve our discoverability. Here, back on our Wix website. So this is the live published site of the Wix editor that I showed you earlier. And you can see that I set up a few things here initially. Generally, this is a blank template site, but I've set up two things. One is Wix Stores over here, so you can see shop. And another one is a dynamic recipes list page with dynamic pages powered by the CMS. I want to actually start here on the shop page because I think this is a good example of where Wix already includes JSON-LD out of the box. So here I am on a live site, a Wix Stores product page, and I haven't made any changes in terms of what we've discussed in terms of structured data to what Wix provides out of the box. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click and I'm going to click inspect. And here, if we go over here to the developer panel and we take a look here at elements, so this essentially is the HTML of this page. What we can look out for is the JSON-LD that you're supposed to add in for the structured data. So you could either try and kind of like search for it yourself over here, or what you can do is you can go ahead and search here, just Control F, and we're going to be looking for JSON plus LD. Or is it LD plus JSON? Let me see, LD plus JSON. Yeah, sorry, other way around. So LD plus JSON, you can just look for this combination over here. And you can see that we've detected this script over here inside of our HTML. Once I pop that open, then you can see here that Wix has already provided some structured data regarding this product based on Google specifications that will help this product be featured in search engines. So this is something that Wix provides out of the box. You don't really need to do anything else in terms of the JSON LD of these pages, but I'll show you in a moment where we do have access to it. Another way that you can test and see if a page has this structured data already included is to use the tester that Google provides through that documentation that I showed you. So that's what we have over here. So does your page support rich results? And you have a URL option over here. So if you just click URL, then you can paste any URL over here and it will tell you if it has structured data and if the structured data is structured correctly. So what we could do is we could just go ahead and grab our product page and we can head over here. Sorry, I gave you a spoiler alert. I gave you a preview of what we're going to be doing later on in the tutorial. But for the moment, we can go ahead and paste that over here and then go ahead and just test the URL. And this can take sometimes even up to a minute or two. So don't get stressed out if it's taking a while. It doesn't necessarily mean anything is broken. And we see here a couple things in the result. So initially, this doesn't look awesome because the URL is not available in Google. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with our structured data. It just means that our site isn't currently being indexed, and that's pretty normal for a brand new Wix website. So if we scroll down a little bit, then we can see here that we've detected some structured data. And if we open this up over here, then we can see one valid item detected. So we've detected items or structured data that's eligible to be displayed on Google in terms of rich results. And you can go ahead and you can view the tested page over here on the side, and it just points you to essentially the HTML, so what we were looking at before. And we also have this button here for preview results. And this doesn't seem to be working so awesomely. Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly what we were supposed to see there, but in terms of detecting that we have the structured data, we've done that successfully. So that's what you can do once you're done setting up your own structured data in order to make sure that you've done it correctly. If you want to set up structured data for other pages of your website or tweak the structured data that's included in Wix apps, so that could be Wix Stores or other Wix apps as well, then you can head over here to the SEO settings in your dashboard. So here I am inside of, it's here, Site Mobile App, Website and SEO, SEO and GEO, GEO being generative engine optimization, or for AI essentially. So here we have the different types of pages. So one thing we have here is the products. So let's start there because that's what we've taken a look at so far. And here's a list of all our products. And I'm not doing a general SEO video now, so I'm not going to talk too much about everything that we see here. But we do have the option here to click Edit for specific products. And then it'll open up a panel over here on the side we can go over here to advanced, and then here we have something called structured data markup. Okay, and if we open that up as well, then we can see here that we have the default product markup. That is what we saw essentially already in the HTML. And we do have the option here to test it on Google. We could also go ahead and add a new markup. Okay, and this is something that's available on all of our pages of our site, essentially. So not only in the products. By the way, if you see this warning here, this is why we didn't see that it's appearing on Google when we did our testing, because we didn't turn on site indexing. So if you just turn that on, then that will make sure that your site is displaying on Google. So that's just a small general tip. But let me just show you how all the pages, so for example, if I go here to main pages, and I go here to, let's say, the home page, and I go over here to edit, then over here as well, inside of advanced, we have this structured data markup. And if I go and open this here, I can add new markup. Okay, so this is something general for all the pages of the site. And what you can do here is just write your markup in JSON-LD format. So you can do a few things in order to get it right. Either you can go, let's say, directly to Google here in terms of the features. And I don't know, let's say that I'm doing something, let's say for my homepage. Let's say I'm setting up FAQs on my homepage. And I can just go over here to the actual structure of the data. And I can use this, or I can take their example that we have over here. So for example, just go ahead and copy this like we have right over here, and go over here to the dashboard and just paste that right over here. And it says here HTML tags can only be added to the start and end. Where is the problem here? Oh, because here inside of the text, you'll see here that there's a P tag over here. So that's why it's throwing that error. I'm very happy that it happened to me, because it might have happened to you first, and that would have been sad. And you wouldn't have had the answer as to why it's happening. So there we go. Get rid of those P tags over there. And obviously, you're going to want to change this out for whatever your actual data is. You don't want to just paste these generic facts that FAQs that Google has provided. But essentially, just give this a name, let's say test, and then we can go over here and click apply. And now we have this structured data on our homepage. And if I go ahead and publish this, then once we publish our site, I'm actually not sure if you have to publish your site again. We can test that out right now together. But let's go over here to our homepage. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it a hard refresh. And let's inspect our homepage over here. So I'm going to go over here to elements, and let's search over here. So we'll search for JSON. Sorry, was it LD plus JSON? There we go. And if I open up the script right over here, then we can see essentially Wix took the JSON, the LD JSON, JSON-LD, the structured data that we provided, and injected it into the HTML of our page for us. Okay, so that Wix did for us. And it also did some verifications, as we saw, that the structure was correct. So that's great. Another option that you have here in terms of getting this structure set up is actually just using ChatGPT. It's pretty good at setting up the structured data. You could just tell it which type it should use, maybe even give it a link to that Google page in terms of the structure, or give it this example and tell it to create the structured data for you, and then you can go ahead and put it on your page. So that's in terms of static pages. But what if we have, for example, a page that is dynamic? So that's why I set up these recipes here. So these recipes are dynamic pages. Let me show you how it's set up in terms of the editor, for those of you who might be a little less familiar. So we have here a CMS collection, which has recipes. And the data is organized over here. And each of these items essentially has a representation on our website as a dynamic page. So this is the list page with all of the pages linked. And then if we go to an individual page, for example, the margarita pizza, then we have the recipe itself. This is all very, very rudimentary and basic in terms of the setup and the design. I just kind of used whatever Wix was providing here out of the box. But that's the structure of what we have here. So the difference here is that each of our recipes is going to have different data. It's not like our homepage, which might have like a list of facts and we could just put it in there, or some static structured data that's only going to be done once. We could have thousands of recipes, and we don't want to have to create the structured data for every single recipe and go and paste it there in that thing, right? We want something that's a little more dynamic. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that. We're going to go back to our SEO settings over here, and we're going to look for our recipes items page over here. So these are dynamic pages, okay? And we're going to go here to recipe item. So this is essentially a template page for each of our recipes. And if you want to learn more about dynamic pages, I have several tutorials about them, blog posts as well. It's definitely something that I'd recommend reading more about if you're not familiar with. It's a super powerful tool on Wix. And here again, we have the structured data markup for our dynamic pages. I'm just going to go ahead here and click edit. And we have some initial image markup that Wix provided out of the box because it knows that we have images on this page, but we want to add in our recipe markup, right? Because Google, we know, supports structured data for recipes. And I'm going to go ahead and add in that markup. And you'll notice here something that we didn't see before on the static page, and that here's the option to add in a variable. Okay. So let me show you how to do this. I don't know if we'll do the whole thing together, but I'll at least show you the blocks, and then you can build the building by yourself at home based on your needs. But let's go over here, back up here to Google, and we're going to look here for the recipe structure. And here, let's look for the example that they have over here. So this is the structure for recipe. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just grab this whole structure over here. And again, you might not have all of these properties in terms of your recipes. You could have some of them, but you have to have at least the required ones, which you can read about down below. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this over here. And I'm going to head back to our settings panel, and I'm going to paste the JSON over here. And here we'll have this just say recipe. Oh my God, my spelling, excuse my spelling. There we go, recipe. And what we want to do here, essentially, obviously, we don't want to use the data that Google provides because those are not our recipes, but we also don't want to hand type every single recipe here. But what we can do is we can replace the data here with variables. So let's go over here, and I'm just going to get rid of the name. And I'm going to click here, add variable. And here we have a list of all the different fields in that collection that I showed you earlier. And we can use those in order to populate the data here in the JSON-LD. So let's see over here. Here we have primary field, recipe name. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to click that. And you can see here that it put in this variable, recipe name primary, here instead of the name. Okay, and we could do the same for lots of other things that we have over here. So I'm not going to go ahead and show every single one, but let's just show how this name would work in terms of displaying dynamic data. So I'm going to go ahead over here and I'm going to click apply, and I'm going to save the changes that we made over here. And the changes are saved, so this should again be reflected on our live site. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to refresh this page right over here for our margarita pizza. And I'm going to head over here, to the HTML, and let's just do Control F, and we're going to look for LD plus JSON, and we can see that it's being added here, and we have actually a few scripts here, so we can peek around and see what each one is. So this one is for that image markup that we saw earlier, and this one seems to be empty. Not sure how that got here. And then this third one is the new one that we have, and this is the dynamic JSON-LD. And here you can see, if we take a look at the name of the recipe, then it says classic margarita pizza, because that's the page that we're on now. So it's essentially populating it dynamically with the value from the collection, the same value that would be displayed on this recipe page. And we can go over here and go back and, for example, check out one of these other ones. So let's check out the chicken tikka masala. And if we go over here and just going to give this a refresh over here. And if we take a look here at the name of the recipe now, it says chicken tikka masala. Okay, so it essentially dynamically will change the values that should be there based on what you have in the data in your collection. So you just set it up once using the variables that we showed earlier, and then you're done. Now, there may be some scenarios where the variable option that Wix provides is just not enough, and you want to do something a little more customizable and essentially set the structured data using code. So that's the next thing that we're going to take a look at, and we're going to see how to set the structured data using the new JavaScript SDK. In this next part of the demonstration, we're going to be writing a little bit of code. I think that it's code that you could probably handle even if you don't have any background writing code. But again, if this is something that intimidates you, I think that what we've shown so far should cover 95% of the use cases, and you probably don't even need code in order to set up your structured data. If you, for some reason, do need code, you need something you weren't able to do with what I showed you until now, and I'm going to give an example of that in a moment. Then you're going to be using this set structured data API from the SDK. So that's here under SEO. And you can see here in this example over here that essentially we need to just import this SEO package here from site SEO. And then inside of our onReady, we're going to set the structured data. And the structured data itself looks pretty similar to what we have, what we've seen until now. The advantage is that we can use code essentially to dynamically set the values. And that can be especially useful if we, for example, want to do something similar to what I showed you in the first example with the FAQs in a slightly more dynamic way. So let's take a look and see what that might look like. So here back inside of our editor, what I've done is I've set up a new CMS collection with FAQs. So if we open up this collection over here, then you'll see it's essentially a list of questions and answers. And what we want to do is set up over here an structured data for the home page based on these FAQs. But instead of taking the question text and answer text and generating kind of like a hard-coded FAQ structured data, we want to do it dynamically. So based on what we have here in the collection, it will create structured data. And this is useful because it allows us to keep this collection dynamic. So as soon as we add in, let's say, a new FAQ, then it will automatically update the structured data for our page, and we won't need to go ahead and go to ChatGPT or go to a text editor and edit it and then update it inside of the settings like we saw earlier. So the first thing that we'll do here is we'll just get rid of the old structured data that we set for the home page. And we can do that here as well for some of the pages. If we go over here to settings, SEO basics for the page, and then over here to advanced SEO, we see here that we also have the structured data markup over here. And here's the test that we added earlier. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and remove that because we're going to be adding it dynamically now using code. In order to add in the structured data using code, first we're going to need to turn on dev mode up here on the upper left. If you happen to be using Wix Studio, then you're going to find code mode over here kind of on the left side. Look for those curly brackets that look something like this, but just over here on the bottom. Now that we've turned on code mode, we are ready to start implementing the set structured data that we saw earlier. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and copy over this import line. And I'm going to paste that in the editor right up here on the very top. And you'll notice that this has kind of like a squiggly red line under it. That means that we need to just install the package, and we can do that automatically right over here. So this package is now installing in the background. And we can go ahead and get rid of all this commented out code over here. And here we're essentially ready to start setting our structured data. And we're going to do that by creating a new function here. So I'm going to say here that we're going to have an async function. And the reason I'm making it async is because we're going to need to get data from our collection and then display it, and then alter it and create our structured data from it. So here, let's call this, let's say, setup FAQ structured data, just like that. And our end game here is going to be to do what we saw inside of the demo here in the documentation, which is to have SEO, set structured data, and then we're going to pass in an array of all the different structured data that we're going to have here. So let's go over here, and we're going to say here SEO dot set structured data. And here we're going to be passing in an array with all of the structured data. Okay, and let's take a look again at what the structured data for FAQ is supposed to look like. So back here inside of Google, if we take a look here at FAQ, so we'll notice over here that in terms of the FAQ, so we have two parts essentially to our structured data here. So we have the general structured data, which is here in the object, but an important part of it is this main entity. And this main entity is actually also an array with all of the different questions and answers that we have in our FAQs. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this right over here. So I'm going to copy everything that we have here. And I'm going to go back into the Wix editor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that right over here. Okay, just so we can see it. And we're going to be doing a lot of editing over here. So this doesn't need to change because this is the type and the context, which is defined by Google. So this is something that we won't need to alter. All of our playing around is going to be here inside of the main entity. Here again, there's things that we're not going to be changing, which is, for example, the type, which is question and answer. And what we want to change here essentially is the name, which is essentially the question itself, and the text, which is going to be the answer. And we're going to want to do this dynamically. So what we're going to want to do before we create our structured data is we're going to have our own array, okay, where we're going to say here, let's say const, we can call it even main entity, like that. And this is going to be an array with all of our questions and answers. So inside of this array, what we're going to have is we're going to have question like this, and answer, etc. Okay, and we're going to do this dynamically based on the data from our collection. So I hope I haven't lost you yet. If I haven't, then what we're going to do now is we're going to pause our editing of the SEO structured data, and we're going to focus on getting the data from our collection. And we're going to be doing that using something called a Wix data query. And we can find that also over here inside of the documentation. So we're going to be looking for the data documentation. Let's look over here. So we have data and items. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running a query. Okay, query will allow us to get all the items essentially from the collection. And we're going to do something like this. So we're going to grab this import line over here, head back into the editor, and I'm going to put that right over here up on top. And this we're also going to need to install. And over here, before we even start setting up our structured data, what we're going to do is we're going to run a data query. So I'm going to say here const, and I'm going to say FAQ query result equals to items.query. And then here we're going to need the name of our collection. So you can go over here to databases, and here we can see that we have inside of these parentheses, we have here FAQs, and we can also just copy this right over here, copy collection ID. So we're going to want the one here in the parentheses, not this one over here. And what we're going to do now is just paste that right over here inside of the query. And after that, we're just going to chain a find. And since this collection, in terms of the permissions, should be open, we can double check that over here. So here it's set to show content, so anybody can view this content, which means we should have no problem querying this data from the front end. If you have data that's a little more secure in terms of the permissions, you might need to do this in the back end first, but I don't want to overcomplicate things for those of you who are just getting started. So here, this will essentially be a list of all the FAQ data. And once we get that data back over here, what we're going to want to do is map those items to the data structure that we have here in the structured data. So what we're going to say here is we're going to say const structured FAQs equals to, and then we're going to get the FAQs query result dot items, which should be, okay, this can happen. Okay, so here it says items that do not exist on such and such, and that's because I forgot something over here, which is to just do await like that. Okay, so that's why we set this up as asynchronous to begin with, because of this await over here. Because this is a promise, I have videos about promises. It's a concept that's a little sometimes hard to grasp, so I'm not going to try and explain it right now. But essentially, once we do FAQ results.items, it should be a list of all of those results. And what we can do then, and that's going to be an array, which we can then go ahead and map by saying dot map. And then for each item, what we can do is essentially restructure it to look something like this. Okay, so we can go ahead and grab the structure here of one of these main entities. Okay, just like that. And we can put that right over here. And I'm going to go ahead and format that. And here we have, this is excess here, so we can go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, so essentially here we have, right, I can move this down so you can see essentially why we just got rid of those squiggly brackets. There we go. Okay, the formatting moved it back up. So essentially these are the squiggly brackets that we copied over, so we don't need both of them. But here, now we need to, instead of just having the data that Google provided, we want to dynamically make this the data from our collection. So here, instead of name, we're going to replace this with our question from the collection. And we can see here what that field is called by opening this up. And here we have the question text. So I'm just going to copy that field ID. And then over here, we can just say item dot, and then paste the field ID, dot question text. And we can do the same thing here for the answer text. So I'm going to copy that. And here, instead of text, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this over here. And what we can do right over here is say item dot answer text. There we go. So now, essentially what this is going to be is an array. Instead of the data from our collection directly, it's going to be structured in this manner that we need for our structured data. So we don't really need this main entity thing over here. This was just like to demonstrate to you what the next steps would be. We could just take these structured facts and set that to be the main entity over here. So we can go ahead and get rid of all of this till the end of the array. And this main entity is going to be our structured facts, just like that. And last but not least, we'll want to remember to call this function inside of the onReady. That's typically the step that I forget. So just going to call that right over here. And what I'll do as well is I'm going to add in some console logs just to show you kind of what the data looks like step by step. And it will also help us debug if we encounter any issues. So I'm going to say over here console.log. And let's say over here query results. And this will be just the raw query result. So you can see what the data looks like. Whoops. Just like that. And then we'll take another screen snapshot here of our structured data. So we'll say here console.log, and we'll say structured FAQs. And here we'll have structured FAQs. And last but not least, we can also add some error handling and observing if the promise is resolved or not by chaining over here .then and .catch. And you can see this in the documentation as well in terms of .catch, no error, .catch. I usually use try catch and not this. I already forgot how to do a .catch. Maybe I was doing it right the first time. Well, this is embarrassing. Error. Maybe it's like that. Yeah, that should be right. So then essentially what this does is if this set structured data works, then this .then is going to run. There's nothing that comes back here in terms of the result, but we could just do, let's say, console.log structured data set. And here, if there's an error, then we can log the error. So we could do console.log error. Okay, so that's all set up now for observability in terms of just allowing us to evaluate if this is actually working, and if not, what might have gone wrong. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to publish this live, and then we'll head over to the live site to see if our structured data is set as we expected, and if not, why not? Here I am on the live site after publishing and just refreshing a few times. And I'm going to open up the inspector panel over here again. And first, let's head over here to the console. And let's take a look and see what was happening kind of under the hood. So first of all, we have our query result. Okay, so this is the data that came back from our collection. And you can see here that we have this array of items. And each item here has all the data from that collection. So it has the answer text and the question text as well. But it has also all the other data regarding this item in the collection, which we didn't really need for our structured data. So that's why we went ahead and we refined this to the structured facts. So you can see here, now it's an array of just the format that Google requires. And instead of the data that Google had, we actually have the data from our collection. So if we were to go now and add in a new FAQ item in the collection, that would automatically just appear here and also be set in the structured data, which we can see as indicated here that it has been set successfully because we went into the .then and not into the .catch. So let's go ahead now and do some of the final checks. So we'll go over here and we'll take a look for our LD plus JSON. And so we could see that it's pointing me over here, but this is not that exactly. LD, no, was it JSON? No, LD plus JSON. Let's see, plus JSON. So I'm not seeing it here quite yet. This is not what we're looking for in terms of that. Let me try refreshing the page again, because it did say that it was set successfully. So let's try here. Sorry. LD plus JSON, one match. No. Okay, so I'm not seeing it here yet inside of the HTML. But let's go ahead and try the Google evaluator and see what comes up. So I'm going to go over here and we're going to run a new test. Okay, so I'm going to just put this URL over here and hit enter. So it's testing this, our homepage essentially now to see if it detects it. I don't think it will detect it because if we didn't see the actual data there, oh, okay, I spoke too soon. So it did detect the item. Let's see, it detected, so here we can see it detected structured data of the type of FAQ. And here we can see the kind of the actual, I don't know why it says here unnamed item. I'm not sure if that's a bad thing or not. But here we could see the actual FAQs that are set up. So this is good. Okay, because if Google can find it, then that means that it's working. I'm not sure why we didn't see it in the HTML yet. It could just be a matter of like caching and the page isn't refreshed on my side, but all the indicators point to the fact that it's set up correctly. If we view the page over here, then we do see the JSON-LD, and we do see the structured data here as we should. So I'm just going to attribute the fact that it hasn't been working over here yet to just a caching issue. You know, maybe try publishing the site a few times and making sure that like I'm getting here the most updated version of the site. Yeah, I'm still going only one match here. Anyway, I'm not too worried because if Google says that it's working, then it's working. And also from the Wix perspective, the fact that we're seeing that log of the set structured data, this log over here, structured data set, sorry, this is a pretty clear indicator that everything is working smoothly. I'm just going to look for it one last time. I don't see it here yet. Anyway, you can try you can try going to this URL later on for fun and seeing if you see it eventually. I'm 99.999% sure that this is just a caching issue on my end, and that's not why I'm not seeing it. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. That really helps me see that people are enjoying the content and points to the direction of what people want to take a look at. If you want to see more videos like this every week that might go ahead and really give you those tools that you need to improve your Wix website, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And as always, if you have any suggestions or thoughts, you can share them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.